Hey guys, this is Ryan from Soul Trek Ministries, bringing you nowhere near death. I'm still getting used to the delay here. I do apologize for that. For those of you who have listened, first of all, welcome. It is January 30th, 2025. For those of you new or haven't seen any of the stuff that I've put out before, the reason for the podcast name Nowhere Near Death is I have been fighting illnesses for the past a little over 3 years. Started off with chronic pancreatitis, ended up with end-stage liver disease. Been given several pretty short death sentences through GI bleeds. Excuse me. And actually had a couple of near-death experiences. Um, kind of made it through the woods on that and was diagnosed a few months ago with pancreatic cancer. So going through treatments with that right now. Feel pretty good today though. Just doing radiation right now. They put the chemotherapy on hold. I didn't have a good reaction to it, to my liver and something with my heart. I had to go see a heart doctor on Monday. And they said everything looked okay, but they're going to do a stress test and see if it was the chemo that made it seem like I may have had a heart attack. And they said that it was actually possible that I may have had a heart attack. So, anyway, got that out of the way. And so that's the reason for the name. And I just wanted to preface this saying that through these trials, I have become an ordained minister, working on a degree in divinity from Christian Leaders College. Took off a little while back, traveled for a couple of months, getting closer to God, visiting churches, had occasion to help people when they weren't expecting it. It was really mostly fulfilling, somewhat stressful. Still had some of the lingering effects of the liver disease. Earned 7 certifications so far while I was sick. Some of those were in mental health coaching and counseling. So I'm a master mental health Christian coach and counselor. And although I did undergo a supernatural change, I was born again through the second near-death experience, which I will get into later. But I wanted to kind of get ahead of any of the future podcasts that I have on here about, because I am going to open some live ones up to questions and things like that. But I wanted to kind of get a couple of things out of the way. And like I said, although I went through a supernatural change as we do when we're born again, I still remained steadfast on a few things that I wasn't even aware of that were happening so regularly these days. I also want to draw attention to the fact that although I considered myself a Christian before all this happened, I hadn't picked up a Bible for 40 years. So I knew little to nothing. And as a result, I didn't have many conversations about it. And you know what you do and don't know about. People have to. And that's the reason for this episode here. I know in 1 Peter 3:10, I think is what I put on the description here, but I've got 3:15 on here. It says, but in your hearts, set apart Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect, which basically means know your Bible, know the word. Just like it says, give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason to hope they had. And that should not just apply to Christianity. More and more, when I've listened to, let me kind of also set the stage for this, but I paid almost zero attention to anything going on for the latter part of my teen years and most of my adult years. I traveled around. I've only voted for president twice, one of them being this last election, and I voted for Obama once. Don't really care who knows what, and the reason being is I just didn't follow it. I didn't bother to research things. It seemed like everything was being run on the same things were being run on every single time. So I just kind of bowed out. Plus, I've never really, I've never understood a lot of things that people do. I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder when I was in the hospital. So it went undiagnosed until I was about 48, which was the reason for the liver disease and the pancreatic cancer. I drank a ton up until a little over 2 years ago when I quit, and I have not touched a drop, like I said, in over 2 years. I've been sober. So um, I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with what is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. In psychology, it's a cognitive bias whereby people with limited knowledge or competence in a given intellectual or social domain greatly overestimate, excuse me, greatly overestimate their own knowledge or competence in that domain relative to objective criteria or to the performance of their peers or of people in general. Basically, what that means is people have a tendency to, if they decide to talk about something that they have no practical knowledge of, no studied knowledge of, and they're speaking, and I'm not doing this episode to be judgmental. I'm not doing this just to kind of pick on everybody, but it just sort of seems to be the norm these days. Um, but by and large, um, people in that situation that are speaking out of ignorance and don't have the knowledge that they need to have the conversations that they have always seem to have this special, uh, you know, they seem to walk proudly in it. They seem very confident. They come off as knowing what they're talking about when they don't. In fact, a lot of times I kind of look at people and I think, have you studied this at all? Do you have any idea what it is that we're talking about, what you're talking about? Um, so, I just wanted to kind of point that out. You should read a book, like, for example, I don't know, pick almost any example of an advanced, whether it's medical, um, especially since I've been in that world for a while now. A lot of people will say, well, what if it this, what if that, and everything else, and they're not doctors, and they have no medical training, they have no medical knowledge, really, whatever limited exposure that they've had to it for themselves, or maybe their kids or a parent or something like that. But I tend to listen to doctors. I consider myself, and I was gifted and talented growing up, I consider myself to be a fairly intelligent person and one that actually does my due diligence when it comes to knowing what I'm talking about. Um, I become a question machine, and I don't think that knowing too much is a thing, but not knowing enough definitely is. There shouldn't be any shame in learning, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Um, and another thing, and I probably should have put this prior to that, but when did people just completely stop speaking correctly? This is another one that I don't know how this happened or why. And again, when I say I was isolated, I had isolated myself. Yes, I dealt with people on a regular basis and things like that, but I just really didn't pay attention, and conversations were not in depth. And like I said, politics just seemed to repeat itself constantly. Um, and most people would forget within a couple of months, uh, what was going on 2 months prior anyway. So it didn't seem to me that it was that important that I keep up with it or even vote. Um, and things have gotten crazy. Biology doesn't matter. The truth doesn't matter. Everybody has their own version of the truth or their own truth when actual truth is uh, objective. It's not subjective. So, I really don't know what to say other than that. Um, but speaking correctly just doesn't seem to matter anymore. And I can't be the only one who thinks like this. between the made up words and terms that we can't even verify are being used correctly half the time. And what it lends to is actual words with dictionary meanings that used to mean a specific thing that have been around and used for a very long time, just no longer are used correctly. They're not in the right context. And communication is arguably one of the most important things to keeping our civilization moving forward in a positive way. If we don't know what the other person is talking about, if we don't know how to get our point across to people and how to receive their point, I guess I don't understand how we expect to get anything done. And I don't know what has happened. And it seems to be completely okay now as well to just not tell the truth. Um, you should research, you should learn first. And then if you still have the same point of view, then you should speak. Otherwise, you're disrespecting whomever you're talking to and you're disrespecting yourself. You're making a fool out of yourself because chances are one of you knows more about the subject than the other. And this whole thing with debate is not two people speaking over each other. There's an actual definition, and it's not two people speaking over each other. It's just screaming whatever until it gets so muddled that you can't really even pick a side or a point because you don't know where it's at. And it's so many times now. I mean, the truth is just ignored. And I can't fathom why people would want to talk so loudly to make it known without a doubt how ignorant they are. Not stupid, just lazy. I mean, think about the information you're relying on. Is it something you just heard from somebody else who has an agenda and needs you to believe that in order to back them up? In which case, you should have enough self-preservation and you should, I mean, if you're going to, I can only assume that if a person is going to go around interjecting themselves in two conversations on a regular basis, that they care, that they want people to hear what they have to say and they want to be persuasive and things like that. And the best way you can do that is to know what you're talking about, to have knowledge, to be able to cite your sources, to be able to say this person said this. Yes, a lot of it is cognitive reasoning and things like that, and you need to logically go through things and form your own, not even just an opinion but your own viewpoint on how you're going to look at it, how it affects you, how it affects the people that you're talking about and things like that. But it just does no good to keep repeating what I've had probably two or three different people that I've noticed since I really kind of hunkered down and started studying and started watching what people do, how they communicate. And especially now that everybody, just like I am right now, can get online and for a very limited amount of money, they can broadcast their opinions and what they think or what they want to do, on anything. So you would think that that would cause an uptick in wanting to learn and wanting to become more knowledgeable about things in order to portray that information. Because, I mean, and you just think of things like this. Have you ever walked away from an interaction with somebody uh, and told people for the next 10 years, I talked to this person that I had just met and they lied and told me things that weren't true the entire time. It was really wildly helpful. um, my guess is no. People, that's not the reaction that you're going to get. And so you'll be forgotten having spread either that or you'll be remembered in a way that you don't want to. And just spreading things that either A, aren't true, And you may or may not know that they're true. It is very easy to figure out whether or not they are. You don't even have to get in your car and go to the library. If you have a computer, a smartphone, a tablet, you can look these things up. And I've had the argument presented to me as well, saying, well, you have to watch that. That's true. You do have to watch where your sources that you get information online from. However, there are also books and things like that that came out before the widespread untruths and before it became okay to just say whatever and it didn't matter if you'd researched it, if you'd been there, if you'd experienced it firsthand, if you read about it, if you were qualified to even speak about it. I don't know, it's just baffling to me, and I will be the first one to stand up and say, hey, look, I don't know anything about this topic, so I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm going to listen and hopefully pick some things up. At the very least, I'm going to pick up some things to where I know what to go research because I know what it is that people are talking about. I know what it is, what information that they're looking for. So um, I'm pulling for everybody because I do want to do some live podcasts like this one, but I want to get to the point where I'm taking questions or interacting with an audience, and the same with doing some public speaking as well. But I just think that you're selling everybody short. Like, just come prepared. Prepare yourself, even if it's a conversation with your own mother or brother or best friend or anything. At least be somewhat prepared. And if you don't know anything about the subject, it's okay to ask them. There's nothing wrong with not knowing something that you haven't been exposed to. Nobody could expect you to. Um, I guess I'm confused. When I was a little kid, I learned to try to be right by backing things up and relying on the truth, and to never just trust what people had to say, and unless it was an especially rare occasion. If that person happened to be a well-known expert in that field, or if it was glaringly obvious that they knew what they were talking about. But at least have some sort of contextual knowledge of the subject that you're getting into. And furthermore, and the reason why I brought debate up earlier is my younger brother actually ended up with a debate scholarship and went out east, and he ended up graduating from Boston University. And I judged some of the debate tournaments and things like that. So I had been around it quite a while ago too. So I've been around formal debates, and I think maybe since I started watching a fair amount of political panels and things like that, and what are supposed to be debates, I think I might have seen two that even loosely fit the definition. Otherwise, it's just people screaming at each other, and they're all saying the same thing. They're saying the same thing as I heard someone else say yesterday, the day before that, the day before that. And I just don't understand how that can possibly be productive. And it seems like if you don't know what you're talking about, but you want to go around preaching it, you want to go around having these arguments or debates or screaming matches or whatever you want to call them, you're lacking your own respect. You're lacking self-respect. You have zero reverence for the subject matter, and you don't seem to give any merit to whom you're arguing with, or again, having a screaming match or whatever. And I'm sorry, I know this sounds like a diatribe. I had to get it out there before I start doing some more of these, because I'm going to at least try, no matter what the topic is. And if I don't grasp or it doesn't seem interesting enough, then I won't do a show on it. And a lot of this is going to be rooted in faith. I am a very devout Christian, and but again, I will get more into that later. Um, and the only reason I can really think of is you don't really believe, or a person can't really believe in what they're trying to say or what they're trying to convince anybody of if they don't even have the time or motivation to study to make sure what they're talking about is even correct. So if you can't answer the simple question, what are you basing this on? Why are you talking about it? I think it has a lot to do with just a profound lack of gratitude. I mean, could be that you couldn't speak at all, or I don't know. So, we've gone over the debate versus the free for all, which it kind of seems like it is. I mean, and again, I wouldn't volunteer to go drive a rocket or an airplane for that matter. Um, Helicopter. You need to learn what you do before you talk about it. Because in arguments, basically, you're trying to teach someone else either how to think like you, or you're trying to expose them to things that maybe they just don't know, haven't been exposed to, haven't thought about it in this context. So you need to sort of own that subject matter as much as you can. And I cannot tell you how many times a debate will just stop in its tracks, and all somebody has to do is ask the other person to give them an example. And I guess that's one more thing I wanted to get in here. I'm not really partisan. Democrat or Republican, I think is kind of silly. I don't really belong to anyone's team. To me, it's more of a person. It's a merit based thing, it's a personality based thing. It's what are your policies? Right now, anyway, yes, right and left are wildly opposed and wildly far apart. But you can just look at that, and no matter which side you're on, and again, I'm not on either one, but no matter which side you consider yourself on, or if you don't consider yourself on either one either, um, you have to have seen this happening all over the place, that nobody ever gets anywhere because nobody ever is prepared. Nobody ever listens. They just keep repeating the same thing over and over and over. And I just don't understand how that's expected to have any sort of effect. Even if you're in a position to really make a difference with what you say, you would think that you'd have trouble sleeping at night because there might be something that you left out of knowing. So I'm just going through here. I kind of made some notes. I think that's about it that I've got for today. Um, I do have a website, www.thesoultrek.com. In the future, maybe there'll be, I don't know, hopefully you got some entertainment out of this, but I wanted to kind of preface going forward with this because I probably won't answer questions if I've heard them, or comment on something that people comment on if I've already heard 30 different people say it, and different, I mean, just be ready, be prepared, think about self-preservation. So, and have some respect for yourself, have some respect for the person that you're dealing with. And by the by, knowledge is power. The more you know, I mean, the more that you can do. So I hope everybody has a great night and a great weekend. And I'll see you guys again soon. God bless.